Hi everyone and welcome. We're about to go down into my wormery to feed a couple of my bins. So we're down in my spreadsheet here, my worm bin tracking spreadsheet, to see what we're going to work on today. And today we're going to work on these two bins here. The other bin that's in that same family, if you will, or that color scheme or that generation, sort of, is 100 days old. And that bin, as you can see here on that day, 7 days ago, did not receive food. That's why this column here, the 17 days ago day, is when this bin actually was fed last, with it here in the next steps noted that resting and keeping wet was its current job. So the whole idea of that being giving the worms a chance to really break down all the fine stuff in that bin, which is something I don't often do. So I'd really like to see that bin become a whole container full of really fine castings with no residual little bits of uncomposted material in it, or very few if possible. So other than maybe checking that for moisture and making sure that we can keep it wet as noted here, we're going to go feed these two bins too. So I got some food in the wormery, so why don't we go feed the worms? So the food they're going to be getting is much like what they always get: coffee grounds and some lettuce cuttings, banana peels, and whatever else might be coming out of the kitchen lately. Not that much though. Just need to do two bins today. Starting with the youngest of my bins, which at this point is actually 69 days old. Not that young anymore. A little bit of moisture here and there. You can see a couple worms poking their heads out. So let's get the camera a little closer. So this is one of the two bins that are going to get fed today. It's been a week since they got fed last. So we'll see how the last feeding is progressing. Right down here in the middle, which is where the marker for the feeding zone was. A little extra light on here too while we're at it. Okay. The casting material down through here looks really nice. It's all littered with different stuff like avocado shell and pieces of bedding material and food, and as you would think, worms as well. Today we're going to get back to putting a lot of bedding down into the feeding area with the food. I'll open up a nice pit for that down the middle. I think I can already see remnants of the bedding from the last time I added this stuff. I think last time I only added food, so bedding was not added last time, but we will today. Try to continue depleting my huge supply of shredded paper. Take two generous handfuls of the stuff. Make sure it's down deep inside the hole. So try to add a little bit of moisture. I usually just put the stuff in dry, but if you've been watching my videos, then you'll know that I'm kind of trying to deal with a little bit of dryness lately. And my spray bottle is actually one of my new things. Well, I've used spray bottles in the past, but usually I don't have one handy and I don't generally use it while I'm feeding or anything like that, but it seemed to make sense to do so. So the food supply today is not so great, and by that I just mean not as big, not so large. Not that it's not great. These worms are fed very well. So I would almost say it's better than great in terms of how good it is. So I think there's about enough remaining to feed to the next bin, because we've still also got coffee to add. Very nice. We'll also sprinkle in some grit to go along with the coffee. Okay. Not sure if we've got some really dry stuff that was resting out on the upper surface of this. But maybe if there is, if we can scrape some of it off here, then we can use that as the topper. Because anything right above the feeding zone is definitely going to get exposed to some nice moisture. So some of this material out on the edge seems like it might be able to benefit from that. Definitely like the way this material looks. It's already starting to look just like a whole bunch of compost here, a whole bunch of compost over here. You know, with obviously large scraps of this and that mixed into it, but it's really starting to look nice and mature at this point. Finally. It's a couple months old. It takes a little time to get there. So I like what I'm seeing here. We're up and move on to the next one. Seems like my waterings have been helping a lot too. The addition of moisture just makes the whole bin seem a lot more cozy in terms of moisture content almost everywhere. All right, next bin. Okay, so working our way to the older bins. We'll do the 100-day bin last, which isn't even getting fed today actually. It's only going to get a little inspection, see how things are coming along. So that last bin was only 69 days old. This one's 83 days old. They're kind of being managed in a similar way to one another. I think this bin has sort of a slight difference right away, noticeable when you start peeling back. It's just the sheer number of worms. This bin, I think, has perhaps the most worms in any of my bins right now. It always looks this way. Every time we go in, we see the same thing. There's a peach pit. I'll throw it off to the side, but we'll try to keep it in with the rest of the food. Okay. Great number of worms. And like previously, we'd tried to take mounds of them out of here before adding the next batch of food, which I think seems to work pretty good. So I'm going to do that again here. See some big chunks of the previous feeding they received, but not too much. It was like a big huge stem of some sort of a cabbage head or a cauliflower or something. Broccoli, hard to say. Some of these large, thick chunk things are taking a little bit longer, but that's hardly, you know, a small fraction of the food they received a week ago, so they really did a great job breaking down what they'd received previously. I'm going to put down a fair amount of bedding too, like I did in the previous bin, because here's some of the stuff they'd gotten last time I put bedding in. You still see fair amounts of it down in the bottom. But we'll put in a nice heap today too. Oh. Whole bunch. Spray it down a little bit too, makes it a little bit more manageable. Kind of keeps its shape instead of trying to spring up so much. And the moisture will help too. Somehow I can already tell just by adding this extra moisture, it's going to help things. Alright, so I'm just going to empty the bag and give them whatever remains. Looks to be about the same quantity as the other bin got. But, you know, with all these leftovers, they've still not consumed from the last feeding. I think we're okay in terms of amount of food they received today. This looks like a nice amount. We'll just put this peach pit right back into the center where it can continue getting attention. You can see a couple baby worms were hanging out, and I don't know if they just crawled onto it now or if they were there when I found the peach pit previously. I can't recall. Let's give them the rest of the coffee supply. Nice moldy coffee. And grit. Okay. Alright, so we're kind of in this mode of trying to keep bins that are alike, you know, in a similar state or maintenance mode. I like doing that because I can always use one or the other as a something to compare to, I guess. If something's going on in one of my bins, you would expect it to be going on in both bins if they're managed similarly. So, from that sort of troubleshooting perspective, I find it helpful to do that usually. Alright. So there again, I was just moving dry stuff from the outer edges and over on top of the freshly added food, which is where we would hope to see most of the moisture that results from the worms breaking down this next batch of food they get. So these little guys, they'll all burrow down. They were just in that big pile that I had left previously. Okay, this looks pretty nice too. Very similar in terms of just a whole bunch of nice compost everywhere, intermingled with some yet to be broken down food, including a lot of big pieces that were left over from last time too, which is, I always find a little bit weird, especially when I do consider this to be one of my more heavily populated bins. It just seems like you should polish off food more quickly. But to me, it almost seems like the previous bin we just fed got rid of its last feeding more quickly, but who knows? Nothing very scientific about those observations. Okay, so this oldest of my bins with this terrarium top with this other bin covering it. Right now I'm not seeing any worms inhabiting the lid. Sometimes you do see them, but right now I don't see any. It's been dry, so that would kind of make sense as to maybe why not. Seems like this feeding zone indicator, coffee filter, is getting gobbled up pretty nicely too. So this bin has been in service for 100 days. It's not intended to get fed today. And it's actually been omitted from the previous feedings the past couple cycles. So while the two bins that we just fed had received food 7 days ago, a week ago, this bin has actually not received any fresh food since, let's see, 17 days ago, I believe is what the spreadsheet said. So, you know, you'd like to start to see mostly castings only, but you know, like, this is weird. Big hunks of what might be bread or cauliflower even. It's amazing that you can feel like you're mixing things up between those two choices, but here too, a full banana stem. You know, with the pressure of one finger, I can break through the middle of it, and you can see it's all occupied internally by the worms, eating it apart, all the fibrous material inside. Not seeing too much of the bedding material here and there. Piece of paper, not too much. That's important too. So it seems like they're making their way through, but they've still got banana peels and uncomposted stuff where they haven't even made it into the middle of the food item yet. Another banana stem. All breaking down very nicely, just, you know, flaking apart in my hands. And the casting material is really beautiful too, although a little bit damp, because I have been coming in here with the spray bottle to help make sure things are, you know, nice and moist everywhere. And I think on that note, you know, since we've kind of opened up this place where all the feedings had always occurred and where there's still some food bits and a lot of moisture, maybe we could do the same thing here, as we could try to feel around to the outer edges and take all the stuff that's been kind of distant from the feeding zones, and as a result kind of left to be a little bit drier. Kind of move it over here into the middle where all the action is, where all the nice moisture is. I think that can only help. The color of this, it's so moldy. It's got to be a hunk of bread, what remains of a hunk of bread. Big sticks. I don't know if they're going to go anywhere at this point. So for a 100-day-old bin, this is pretty good. There again, I'm trying to remember what my spreadsheet said, but I think the average age for my bins, all the ages of my bins are, in one column on my spreadsheet, calculated from their launch day and their harvest day. And on that list, I've got the longest bin and the shortest bin times all marked individually. But there's also an average of all the overall lifespan time frames. I think the average in my bins is like 151 days or something like that. I'll have to double check the spreadsheet, see what that is. But if we're at 100 days now and we're kind of not going to be adding anything new, just from what we've seen here, I think there's plenty to go around for a while at least. And I thought I saw a fair number of worms in here too. So I think there's enough inhabitants in the bin to take care of business here. So I really hope they, take good care of this food. Keeping the terrarium top concept going seemed to help a lot too. Keep the moisture in the bin. So I think we're just going to continue on as is, unchanged. So that's it for today. We've fed the 2 bins that are in service. The 100-day-old bin looks like it's doing pretty good. 17 days since its last feeding, on the regimen of just being kept damp and comfortable for the worms to continue their work in. So we'll see how this stuff breaks down over time. Hoping that it's nice fine compost in short order. Alright everyone, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and thank you for keeping me company. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, always remember to give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. Consider subscribing to the channel too. Maybe even ringing the bell to get notifications that there's new videos online. Alright everyone, have a great day. Bye now.